I've made so many terrible decisions as a barbershop owner that I wanted to make this video so that if you're a barbershop owner or even a barber and you are struggling to make decisions on what to do with your business, then hopefully this video helps you out. I've been a barbershop owner since 2015. I've been barbering since 2014, and I've made hundreds, if not thousands, of terrible decisions that have cost probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. So in this video, I want to share with you 6 kind of rules that I think about when I'm trying to make decisions in the barbershop. So this is probably one of my oldest rules, but starting with number 1, which is good idea, wrong time. So a lot of times I have ideas, right? And these are things that I want to do that I've been, in some cases, have been wanting to do, and I've just been sitting on this idea for years. And then the more I think about this idea, it's just like not the right time for that, right? So we're not set up for that business-wise. I don't have the skill to execute that idea right now. We don't have the money for that. As you're running a business, or if you're a barber, and you want to give the owner of your shop an idea, you have to keep in mind that the owner probably, first of all, doesn't need more ideas. What they probably need help with is the execution of the ideas that are already in motion, right? So it's usually not a good idea to throw a bunch of ideas at the barbershop owner because they probably already have a lot of ideas to begin with. That's a nature of a lot of business owners, is that we're very creative people and we don't necessarily need more ideas. However, if you feel like this is something that's going to save the barbershop a lot of money or make them a lot of money, sure, yeah, you can suggest things, but keep in mind that most barbershop owners need help with the execution, not necessarily the idea side of things. But before giving an idea to a barbershop owner, you have to keep in mind that, is this the right time for this idea? So an example of that, maybe you as the barbershop owner or you as the barber, want to open another location, right? Well, is it the right time to do that? Do you have a year's worth of cash saved in the bank? Plus the amount of money that you're going to have to put into the build out? Do you have a large enough team to where some of the barbers can go to the new location and build that up and have enough left over so that you don't kill the productivity of the original location? So there's so many ideas I've had over the years that it was just like met this criteria where this is a great idea, but wrong time. So another example would be like starting our own product line. I probably hear at least once a week somebody suggests, oh, you guys should have your own product line. Well, I looked into it, and guess what? It is possible to start your own product line. However, the minimum order quantity for your own product, in a lot of cases, is like 1,000 units. And that's just of one product line. So for example, if I wanted to have like a House of Shaves barbershop pomade, I would have to order probably somewhere between 1,000 to 5,000 of just that one product line. And we could do it, but the idea with just 2 locations, I mean, you know how long it would take to sell through 5,000 pomades? Like, that would take probably years. So it's just an example of but if we have 10 locations, 20 or more, then it's like, okay, that seems a little bit more like we could probably take on that sort of risk at that point, because we don't have to have 5,000 pomades sitting in one location. We can spread them out, spread the risk out. So an example of we'd be sitting on all this product that we wouldn't be able to move for years. And it's just like, is there something else that we can, is there a better use of all this money that we'd have tied up in pomade? Probably. So the next rule that I have is, if you're not sure, then don't do it, right? Because, and this is, I think, one of my newer rules that I've been saying a lot lately, but sometimes in the business, we are trying to make decisions and I'm trying to make changes. And that's actually something that I'm trying to work on, like trying to change less, because sometimes you just need to like leave it alone and let it grow. If I'm ever faced with a decision that I'm not sure about, and I just keep thinking about this thing over and over and over again, and I'm just like, I don't know. And sometimes I go ahead and do it anyways, and that can backfire. That can backfire on you, because some decisions, like Jeff Bezos from Amazon calls them like reversible and irreversible decisions. Sometimes you just take a second. Like I usually take at least, if it's a major decision, I usually take at least one night to think about it. I'm just sleep on it basically. And if I'm still not 100% sure, like I want to do this, like, well, actually it doesn't really matter what I want. What I try to think about is like, what is a good decision? Like what is right? Not who is right, but like what is right? And I found that lately, and there's just a few ways that I've found to phrase this, but if I'm not sure about that decision, I'm just not going to do it, right? Because if I don't have enough evidence to support like this is a good move, then I'm just not going to do it, right? Because another way I've said it is, if you're not sure, then go with the option that's less risky, which I've kind of shortened it to, if you're not sure, then just don't do it, right? Because changing nothing is usually the best, in my experience, unless it's a problem that we're trying to solve. Changing nothing sometimes is the best way to go. So my third rule is make decisions that are based on data and facts. So this is something that's not that hard for me to do, especially since our system probably tracks almost everything that we can possibly track in our business. But actually, I have trouble relating to like the barbers that work in my shop, for example, when they give me an idea or they give me a suggestion and I'm like, what proof do you have that is a good decision, basically? Here's just a simple example. So we have a website, and every now and then I'll go on there and I'll change something. Well, I've actually stopped doing that recently, or I changed the process of how I go through changing the website. So typically, my goal is when I want to make a change on our website, I'm usually trying to solve a problem. But how do you know if that was a good decision? So what I've been doing lately is I've been actually tracking the conversion rate of our website. So how many people go to our website, and then of those people, how many end up booking? That's called the conversion rate. So then if I want to make a change to our website, usually what I'm thinking about is I'm trying to increase the number of people that are converting from just visiting to people that actually book an appointment. And before I make a change, I make a note of this was the conversion rate of our website before we made the change. And then I look at it after I make the change, and then I look, did that conversion rate go up or down? And then the data tells me whether that was a good decision or not. It's okay to have theories, but don't make changes in your business based on just theories. Like you have to, in my opinion, you have to track everything, because it's the only way to know whether you're making good decisions or not, and you're moving the business in the right direction. So here's another example of a fact-based decision that we made that might be a little counterintuitive to you. So I had this idea of creating a downsell. So I was like, my theory was, I bet if we have like a cheaper beard trim service, that more clients would book it. And then I started to think about, okay, so how am I going to decide whether this was a good decision or not? Well, out of looking at all the numbers that we track in our business, I decided, well, that would probably reflect in the average ticket. Because if more people are booking a basic beard trim, as we call it, than are just not getting a beard trim at all because of the cost, then in theory, like our average ticket should go up. So that's what we decided to look at to see if that was a good decision. So what we did was we looked at our average ticket before we created this basic beard trim service. And then 3 months later, we looked at it again. And it turns out that the theory was right. We created a cheaper option, but it actually increased our average ticket, surprisingly. And so we kept that, and that service is still on our service menu, because we found that by offering a cheaper option of a beard trim, that the people that weren't willing to pay $40 for a beard trim at the time were willing to pay, some of them were willing to pay $20. So instead of getting nothing, instead of getting zero, we got $20. So over a long enough time, that actually ended up increasing our average ticket. So that's an example of like how you can use facts and data to support these decisions and to track whether it was a good idea or not. And so I've actually started to pick up on, just by the way somebody starts a sentence, I can tell whether they are making a decision based on facts and data or whether they're just guessing. So if somebody starts a sentence with, I feel like, I'm pretty sure, I think, I already know before they get even further into that sentence that they do not have any sort of facts to back up their assumption. And that's what it is. It's basically, if you don't have numbers to back up what you're saying, then it's just an assumption, right? And that's okay, but don't make a change in your business based off assumptions. You have to know where the numbers are now, and then you can you can test it, you can make the change, but you track the results of that. And if the number did not go in the right direction, then it wasn't a good idea, right? And then you go back to the way it was. So my fourth rule is look for win-win-win scenario. So this is going to be possible in every case, but whenever we're trying to make a change as a barbershop owner, whenever I'm thinking about making a change, most of the time, what I'm trying to do is create a win-win-win scenario. So there's got to be 3 people that win whenever I make a change. Ideally, this isn't going to be the case every time, but when I'm looking to make a change, I'm looking for a win-win-win. So the clients, ideally, it's going to be a win for them. The barbers, ideally, it's going to be a win for them as well. And then third, for the business, is it a win for the business as well? So what's an example of that? So a little over a year ago, we decided we wanted to try testing selling memberships. So we have, in addition to somebody coming in and just getting a regular haircut, we also started offering basically a subscription service. And it turns out that that's been a win-win-win scenario for everybody all around. So the clients win because if they're on our membership, it's basically a subscription service, they're actually going to get cheaper services. They're going to save money. So the clients win in that scenario. The barbers actually win too, because if a client is on a membership with us, they are going to be way more regular about their haircuts because the clients are prepaying for their services every month. So they're going to come in and use it, right? And then it's a win for the business because the business gets that recurring revenue every single month. We can count on that. And the clients end up staying longer and spending more money with us in the long run. So in that scenario, it was a win-win-win for everybody. Now, not every decision is going to be a win-win-win. Like, for example, when you have to raise prices as a barber, that's not really going to benefit your clients. It may in the long term because you can invest more into the business, in your tools, in training, and et cetera. But in the short term, that's not really a win for them. You might win and the business might win, but the clients may lose a little bit, at least in the short term on that one. So, but ideally, as a business owner, I try to look for a win-win-win scenario. And every now and then we stumble on one of those, and it's just beautiful when it works out. So my fifth rule is the power of focus. And this is something that I didn't really appreciate how important this was until recently. As a business owner, there's so many things that I could do to grow the business. And honestly, probably like 99% of them are a complete waste of time, right? So the hard part is deciding what to focus on. And there's only really 2 ways to grow the business. You can either get more clients or make them worth more. Anything that I do that is not that is not a waste of time, but not the highest return on time. So I hate the term passive income. I don't think it exists. I think it's better to think about it as your return on time. So out of how much time did I put into this thing, whatever it is? And then of that, how much did I get back? Right? That's what I call your return on time or your return on effort, however you want to think about it. And what you want to do is try to focus. What I try to do is try to focus on the things that move the needle the most. So what's an example of that? So I forgot who I was. I think I was having a conversation with a client about this the other day. And because some clients I'm cool with, and they try to give me advice on business and stuff like that. And I don't know why people think this, but like, so we track everything in our business, all the expenses, everything. And what I like to do is kind of give a percentage of our expenses relative to income. So for example, like rent right now is like, somewhere between 9 and 10% of our revenue. It goes straight to rent. So like supplies, the things that we go through to do our job is something like around 5%, somewhere between 5 and 10. Our payroll is right now, I mean, it changes depending on how busy we are, but right now, payroll is like between 40 and 42% of our revenue. Like that's not profit. Like that's of all the money coming in, 42% or so goes straight to payroll. And that doesn't count the benefits. That's because we do healthcare, dental, 401k, everything. That's just what the barbers get paid, just payroll, 42%. So when I was having this conversation with a client, he had suggested something to me about, well, how much is your rent? And he made a few suggestions, and I'm like, look, I could probably spend a few hours trying to figure out how we can get our supplies for a little bit less. Or he made a suggestion about like the air conditioner, like utilities, so saving a little bit of, which our electricity bill is probably like less than 1% of revenue, like if that. So he had made a few suggestions, and I was like, I appreciate the advice, but I try to figure out if I'm going to spend my time trying to solve a problem, what I'm going to try to do is figure out what am I going to spend my time on that's going to have the biggest return on my time. So I could try to figure out, okay, how do we get our electricity bill down? How do we use less water? How do we, little things like that. But how much would that actually make a difference in our business? Probably very little. But if I can try to figure out how to lower our payroll by 1 or 2%, that's going to have a much greater impact on the business than trying to save a few $100s in supplies. I think it's all important. But if I only have 1 hour in the morning to work on one thing before I got to go to the shop, what I try to do is I try to think about, okay, all I have time for is to do one thing right now. Out of all the things I could do, what's going to be the one thing that's going to move the needle the most? And that's what I try to do. When it comes to trying to make decisions on what to work on, that's how I think about it. It's like there's a lot of things that we can do to grow the business. There's a lot of things we can do to save money, but there's only so much time in the day, and I only have so much energy, and I want to focus on the things that are going to move the needle the most. All the other things are important too, but it's just like in terms of priority, focus on one thing, and then once you got that, then move on to the next biggest thing. Rule number 6, asking what problem am I solving before actually making a decision has been huge, because as a business owner, I get so easily distracted by things that seem important, but are really not. Or I'm tempted to make a change on something that really isn't going to make a difference at all in the business. And I've probably spent way too much time working on things that absolutely just do not matter at all. And if you're like me, you like to change things. You like to, because it's exciting and that behavior has been rewarded in the past, and you want to keep changing things and you want to keep making the business better, which I think in itself is not a bad thing, but there is such a thing as changing too much. But I think the more important thing that you should start with is, what problem am I solving by making this change? Because if you can't answer that question, then don't even go any further in that direction. So before you change anything about the business, you have to be able to answer that question of what problem are you solving? And if you can't answer that question, if you're just making the change for the sake of doing it, then you're probably wasting your time, right? Because you have 24 hours in a day. Don't waste it on things that are going to not make a difference in the business at all. And if you think that you want to make a change on something, just ask yourself, well, what problem am I trying to solve by making this change? And then going back to the earlier rule, what data, what facts am I going to use to support that this is a good decision? Let's say you do make the change, then you go back and review. Did those numbers go up or down? And then you decide if it was a good decision or not. And the last rule, this is a bonus rule. This is something that I've probably been one of the biggest shifts for me lately, which is thinking long-term versus short-term. I've been a barbershop owner since 2015. And basically, until about a year or two ago, I was thinking very short-term. And as barbers, I think we're just naturally like that. We're thinking about today, this week, maybe this month. But as a business owner or just as a barber in general, I think you have to be thinking way further out in the future. So not thinking about today or this week, but thinking about next month, thinking about next year, and then 5 years from now. It's a lot easier said than done, for sure. But one of the major shifts that I've had, and I made a whole video about this recently, but focusing long term. Going back to the membership example, it doesn't make sense in the short term to offer every single client that signs up for a membership a discount on their haircut, because you'd think, well, I'm making less money. And the barbers might be thinking, well, now I'm making less money, so they're not even going to try to sign people up for the membership. But that's the wrong way to think about it, because we are not optimizing for today, for cash flow today. What we're actually trying to accomplish with the memberships is we want clients to come for years. Because if you know what your retention is, and you know, for example, that your clients stop coming after 6 months, they come to you for 6 months and then they stop for whatever reason. Well, if you can get that client to come for 6 more months, so they leave after a year, then you just doubled the amount of money that client spent on it. And for me, it was worth it when I did the math to figure out, okay, so we're going to give every single person that has a membership $5 or $10 off or whatever. But in the long run, if they end up staying longer, we're going to more than make up for that discount, because they're going to end up spending more money with us. So sometimes you have to make decisions in the business that are more long-term related. And I think the more decisions that you make that are long-term, the better off you're going to be. Sure, you do have to put out fires in between, and there's not going to be situations all the time where you can just be thinking long-term. But ideally, thinking long-term, I think, is one of the best things I've started to do lately, and I highly, highly recommend it. So hopefully you found these rules helpful. And these are the things that I think through when I'm making decisions for my business, and hopefully they help you out. See you in the next one.